Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It is me, MsNoBuntu, DIVAA, divinely inspired, vibrantly anointed artist, and I am back again with an Iyanla Fix My Life review, thoughts, sharing insights, and this is season 8, episode 1. This is called the Legacy 2020 season by the Iyanla Vazant team, but this particular episode with LisaRaye in it is episode 1 of this last bit of this final season, and it is called Queen of De-nial. First off, let me start by getting into the report back from LisaRaye when she meets with Iyanla about what's happened since the last time we spoke. And LisaRaye's report is that, my mother's been packing since the last time, but she's still at the house. And with regards to Kai, she says, Kai is still also at the house. And her thing is that if she's not getting paid to appear, then it's about her time, and she's therefore not appearing if she's not getting paid. I wanted to make a comment on that. Kai wants to be paid to appear on the Iyanla Fix My Life show. The Iyanla show and the work that gets done on the Iyanla show is work of high value, and it is work that costs a lot if one were to pay for it. And to be able to get it for free and only offer your life as an illustration, as an example for masses all over the world, is the only exchange that you are being asked to bring to the table. Kai missed out on an opportunity to get very invaluable, wise information and wise help that can help her out of the arrested development that she's in because her mother spoiled her. And also she could have given the world an illustration using her life. She could have used her life as a ministry and given that gift to the world, to be able to illustrate to people how they can break free from arrested development and to begin to build their own life. Seems to me that Kai thinks that she can build a life based on LisaRaye's foundation, based on what her mother built for herself from scratch. And she doesn't understand that what is required of her is to discover who she is, what she's about, and build from the ground up. From her own foundation, and therefore get to the point where she can ask for compensation for appearances based on a background of what she has built. Nobody knows who Kai is or what she has done or what she does outside of being LisaRaye's daughter. She has no reputation in anything that someone would want to therefore pay her for an appearance. She has not done enough nor achieved enough from what I understand to be able to now say, in order for me to appear somewhere, you need to pay me. So I think she's in denial, and she's missed out on a great opportunity to help her catapult herself forward in her life and out of the shadow of her mother, out of the arrested development that she has experienced up until now. So that makes me feel sad for her. She's absolutely missed out. Next up, let's get into the first scene where Iyanla meets with LisaRaye at the house. First, at the beginning of the episode, LisaRaye and Iyanla are in the house, and there's a conversation that is had, and she says that when she was a child, she attached herself to who gave her her way, and that was her father, the person who gave her her way, and she used it for her benefit. What I see from what she said is that she got stuck in that habit of attracting to herself and surrounding herself with people who give her her way, or people that she can use for her benefit. I think she doesn't understand that it was to her benefit that she did not rear Kai in such a way that Kai would leave home early and be a woman who stands on her own and does not live with her mother. I think it was, she doesn't realize that it was to her benefit that, you know, people like even her sister might have been running everything through her entire life until she got to the point where she decided not to. And that was to the benefit of keeping LisaRaye as the head of the family and the one who gets to give the go ahead and say what happens and say what doesn't happen. What I get from this is that that's a dynamic that she learned from her dad. Her dad was a businessman, and we know what else. And this was therefore, because of his money, a powerful man and an influential man. And it seems as though, apart from the modeling that she saw from her mother, she looked very closely at the modeling of her father, and from early on she learned that having power, money, gains you respect and also gains you the ability to control and shift and move people around as you will. And so that's, again, remaining in that position of I'm the most powerful one because I'm Hollywood, because I therefore allegedly have money. I am in therefore the position to move everyone around and tell everyone what to do and control everyone to my liking. That's something that she learned from her father. She saw her father doing to her mother, doing to the women that he was running around with on her mother, and just in the community, how he conducted his business. That's something that she took from her father. Whether it was he was doing legal things or illegal things. Fine, she ended up in Hollywood doing something legal, and still she was moving from a position of, this is what love is. People allow me to control them. This is what love is. People allow me to manipulate them. And if they don't allow me to control them and manipulate them and move them and shift them around and make decisions for their lives, then they don't love me, and they are telling me that they don't love me. And that's not the truth. That's not what love is. It's not about allowing someone to manipulate you in order to then prove that I love you, because you know I allow you to manipulate me and move you any way that, and move me any way that you want to. That's not love. That's just manipulation and control and power and influence. That's all that is. So I think she doesn't get that. She got that from her dad, and she got that from watching her dad do that with money and power. That his dad therefore moved and shifted everyone and controlled and manipulated everyone, whether it was in business or his love life or his other business dealings. She watched that, and now she superimposed that onto her life and to the people she loved the most, and that's how she treats the people she loves. How can I get what I want from you, and how can I benefit from it? Because somewhere it has to do with infilling of her ego, because I think if you're not in touch with who you are, then the only thing that you have to work with is an ego, and everything that you're looking for outside of that is something to fill that ego and puff up that ego. So what becomes clear is that, you know, the breakdown is within herself and not these people that surround her that she thinks she's in breakdown with, but that they are symbols that and mirrors that are there to show her where the breakdown is within herself. And Iyanla talks about how Maya Angelou talks about what that courage is, doing what you know needs to be done before you are forced to do it. And I absolutely love this. And I think she's let this go on for so long. I think LisaRaye is 50 plus at this point. And it takes a while to work through these things. So I'm not going to fault her for that. It's difficult to have difficult conversations with people. It's difficult to have honest conversations with people who don't know how to receive transparent, vulnerable, honest conversations. And it's difficult to have those conversations if you yourself don't have the tools and the skills on how to word things in such a way that they are received. So I'm not going to falter on that. And you know, and that's what leads to what Iyanla is saying, internal success, and not this outer success that she's been posturing into the world, but an internal success that has nothing to do with this Hollywood, with this money, with this power, with this influence, with this respect that money garners, and that status of being an A-lister. I don't know if she's still an A-lister now, garners a person. So, you know, they continue the conversation, and Yana comments to Lisa that, you know, it seems as though, and even the last time, it seemed as though her answers were rehearsed. And, you know, Lisa saying her answers regarding her feelings were rehearsed. And Lisa says, well, I'm thinking about how I feel. And Yana says, that's it. Thinking about how you feel betrays your feelings, because you are therefore not speaking from your heart, you're speaking from your mind, and therefore you're having to construct something and come up with something, and you're not speaking from from your heart, which is what you truly feel, you know. This public breakdown with the brat, with the mom, with the daughter, these things are showing up as problems, as a way to show a breakdown within herself. And Ian explains to LisaRaye that healing is not gotten at the mountaintop. The mountaintop is not healing. The mountaintop is is the prize you get after you've done the work. That's the mountaintop. The healing is in the valley, is in undoing the knots and working through the things in the valley before you get to the mountaintop. And gaining success in overcoming and gaining tools and skills as to how to deal with the things that are in the valley in a constructive way. That's what leads, therefore, to the internal success at the mountaintop once you have conquered all these things in the valley. I had this thought when I was watching this conversation that they were having, particularly in reference to her father. I think until LisaRaye removes the name Raye from her name, she's always going to be in some kind of soul tie to who and how her father was. She's always going to be a reflection of her father at some level in her life. That Raye, she added there as an association to her father, as maybe to show honor to her father, as maybe to show memory to her father, and to express the love that she had and admiration and idol worship that she had for her father. And I absolutely believe that until she removes that Raye out of her name, LisaRaye, she's always going to be in some kind of soul tie with her father. She's always going to have some skewed version and view of what her father was, as opposed to also what he was not, which is the mean, unkind, manipulative, cheating man that he was. And we don't know about his business dealings as well. There's also that truth and that reality of what her father was. And there's also the part where I guess he provided, I guess he sent her to great schools, I guess he gave her everything she wanted, I guess he spoiled her and made her feel good and made her look good. But there's also this other part that it's almost like she's not willing to work through and face the truth about, this is what else my father was, on top of all these other things. And then therefore be able to see him as a whole person and not a half person. I think this attaching her name to her father's name, LisaRaye, is a soul tie, and it's not necessarily a good soul tie. I think that she would benefit from cutting the Raye part of her father's name out of her name as a way of setting herself free from that lust and that kind of lust to that influence and power and respect that was garnered to her father, that money garnered to her father. And I think as long as her name is LisaRaye and it's not just Lisa McCoy, she's always going to have these breakdown issues that reflect her father's, it's like a trauma bond, a trauma bond with her father. He was this great father, but he was also a mean man. You know, was a mean man to her father, mean man to all the women he dealt with, mean man in business. From what I have read and watched documentaries on, he was a mean man. He was an unkind man, you know. And so it's like light and dark, and as long there's no amount of her wearing white that's going to separate herself from the fact that her dad was not only just this knight in shining armor, but he was also this other thing, you know, that was opposite to the knight in shining armor. And I think that for her own good, to just for maybe some time until she resolves that within herself, I think it would do her good to actually symbolically separate her name from her father's name and just call herself Lisa McCoy for now, for some time, until she resolves all that stuff with her father and what she learned from her father that she needs to unlearn and undo and put to the side because it doesn't apply to her life or it doesn't serve her life well. Until she does that, I think she's going to continue to have like this undercurrent of this struggle. She really needs to scrape out these bits of her father out of her identity and then come out as her own identity. And then if she wants to add the Raye back and become LisaRaye again, but knowing exactly who Lisa McCoy is, then she could. That's what I had to say about that. At the beginning, you know, Iyanla asked LisaRaye to rate herself in these areas between 1 to 5. 5 being I'm great at that, 1 being not so great. Okay, so she asked her to rate herself in patience, courage, wisdom, honesty, non-judgment, forgiveness, and self-mastery. She rates herself 4 in all of them. And for me, I saw someone who was really in denial about where they're at and how they move from an egoic place. And that's something that she learned from her dad. She learned money, power, and respect, you know. It's this thing that kind of floods and just seeps through every area of her life, even how she sees herself. So Iyanla's like, okay, we'll see if you still think you score a 4 in all of these by the time that we are done. So they go into this question of, so who was your first love? What was that about? And it goes back to my father was my first love. I love the way that he looked at me, the way that he treated me, the way that he made me feel. Goes back to that thing of this woman at a young age as a daughter was actually truly and really in competition with her mother for her father's attention, which is probably which was uncovered. That is the real main reason why there's a breakdown between her and her mother, is because to her mother she represents her father, but not only that, to her mother she represents the other woman. So it's a difficult relationship because of this kind of triangulation between these women in his house, in the streets, in the hood, that this man created, that created animosity between women, and fight between women and competition between women, but all of it was circulating around him. They talk about how, you know, her heart broke when he saw that he had a girlfriend and that this daughter of this girlfriend went to the same school that she went to. And she was like, ugh, how does this girl get to come to the same school as me? I'm the special one. I'm the real daughter, you know. Again, competition. And Iyanla points to her that that was out of order behavior, and that she learned from her father to see out of order behavior, accommodate it, tolerate it, and not say anything about it. And it shows up in her life. It shows up in her life in the form of her daughter. It shows up in her life in the form of in other forms. I guess to ask her, will you continue to tolerate and accommodate things that are out of order? Another day, another year, another week, another minute. And figure out, okay, this thing keeps showing up. How do I begin to stop accommodating things that are out of order in my life? How do I begin to stop tolerating things that are out of order in my life. This tolerating and accommodating of, what is out of order. Iyanla says it shows up in Kai. When you ask her to do something, she doesn't do it and she says she forgot. And Lisa's like, yeah, she's forgetful. And she's like, let's do this again. When you ask her to do something and she doesn't do it, why is she not doing that? And they eventually get to the truth that she's not doing that because she doesn't want to do it. And she's saying you've been tolerating that she doesn't want to do it and excusing it and accommodating it and calling it something else, Iyanla and LisaRaye have this conversation about how Kai represents how LisaRaye was a young girl who tolerated and accommodated and made excuses for a dad whom she idolized and whom she was in love with, but a dad who was, behaving badly. But a dad who behaved badly and dishonored and disrespected her mother. And this has shown up in that, Kai shows up less as what LisaRaye would like Kai to be, So this kind of stirs up some sort of unresolved feelings for LisaRaye in her life, and that's something that she needs to work with, and it goes back to her father. When Kai says, she's being forgetful about something that she honestly doesn't want to do, that's that accommodation again. That's that tolerating, and that's that tolerating that dishonor and bad behavior that was illustrated by her father growing up. So she knows how to do that with her daughter. She knows how to play that song and her dance with her daughter because she knows how to accommodate and to excuse and to tolerate bad behavior, and call it something else and say, oh, I still idolize my dad even though he's a man behaving badly and dishonoring her mom. I still love my daughter. She's still at the house even though she dishonors you, and when she doesn't want to do something that you've asked her to do, she says, I've forgotten, and you know that actually you haven't forgotten. So that she learned from her own dynamic with her father and her mother, as well as learning how to not confront things head on and call them what they are. Then the segue happens that, the segue happens that then Iyanla says then somebody early in your life exploited and violated your innocence and your vulnerability. And that was her dad. Her dad spoiled her and treated her like she was the center of the world, gave her everything she wanted, exploited and violated her vulnerability and innocence, because that kind of spoiling and giving her everything that she wants was a way of saying, I give you and everything you want and do everything for you. And so you have no right to call me out on my bad behavior. You have no right to call me into order when I'm out of order with your mother. You have no right to call me into order when I'm triangulating you against your mother. You have no right to call me into order when I have other women and I'm involved in business dealings that are not necessarily legal business dealings. You have no right because I provide everything for you. That's a manipulation of one's innocence. That's a manipulation of an exploitation of one's vulnerability and innocence. Iyanla says, so for LisaRaye, everything to her, she kind of reads through the eyes of betrayal, because even though she took her father's treatment of her as a good thing, she understood that she was being betrayed by her father at some level. And so everything that looks like it could betray LisaRaye, betray her headship, betray her control and power and influence over everybody, she reads it as an exploitation. it takes her back to that time where her own innocence, her own vulnerability was exploited and used. So I make that connection that, you know, if her father was violating her vulnerability and exploiting her innocence, which in effect was betraying her daughter, but holding money on top of her and therefore controlling her with money, then that means that she learned that, okay, I can hold money over people, and I can hold status over people, and I can provide for everyone, and I can manipulate them to not call me into order when I'm out of order. And should they do so, I see that as some kind of betrayal. And it's not. It's somebody actually loving you the most and telling you the truth about your BS.